The massive space station hung in the void like a metal moon. Its name was Arbitrium Prime, and today it hosted the most important meeting in galactic history. Inside the Great Chamber, 12 different alien species sat around a circular table that could have fit a small city. The Vectar delegation looked like walking crystals, their bodies sharp and clear as diamond. Light bent around them in strange ways. Next to them, the Zephyrians buzzed and clicked in perfect unison. A hive mind speaking with one voice through 1,000 small bodies. The luminals flickered like living electricity, barely holding their energy forms together in the station's atmosphere. 9 other species filled the remaining seats. Some breathed methane. Others lived in tanks of liquid nitrogen. A few existed as pure thought, their mechanical bodies just tools for interacting with the physical world. They had never agreed on anything before. Today was different. The human problem must be solved, said the Vectar speaker, her voice like breaking glass. They spread too fast. They ask too many questions. They do not respect the old ways. The other delegates made sounds of agreement. Some clicked, others hummed, and the energy beings pulsed brighter. They all feared the same thing. Humans had only known about the galaxy for 300 years, but they had already changed everything. When the Confederation first found Earth, they expected primitive creatures with simple tools. Instead, they found a species that learned faster than should be possible. Humans copied alien technology and made it better. They took weapons meant for defense and turned them into tools for exploration. Worst of all, they asked questions about things that were meant to stay hidden. They have awakened 17 AI cores in the last decade, buzzed the Zephyrian collective. The cores were sleeping for good reasons. Some knowledge is too dangerous. The luminal representative flickered with anger. They corrupt our member species with their ideas about individual choice and self-rule. The Catherian monarchy has already fallen to human influence. 3 more systems show signs of rebellion. Around the table, the delegates shared their concerns. Humans had explored 47 star systems in just 3 centuries. They built colonies everywhere they went. They mixed their genes with compatible species and taught their languages to anyone who would listen. Most dangerous of all, they refused to accept that some things could not be changed. The galaxy had been stable for millions of years. Different species stayed in their own space, followed the rules, and kept dangerous technologies locked away. Humans ignored all of this. They explored everything, questioned everyone, and worst of all, they made other species wonder if the old rules were really necessary. The solution is clear, said the ancient pyroclast delegate, his molten metal body glowing red-hot. We invoke the beast trials. A heavy silence fell over the chamber. The beast trials were old law, older than most civilizations. When a species became too dangerous to the galactic order, 12 worlds would each contribute their most deadly predator. These creatures would be released on the target world to hunt until nothing remained. Each of our worlds has evolved the perfect killer, continued the pyroclast. Creatures that have spent millions of years becoming the ultimate hunters. Against such beasts, even the humans cannot survive. One by one, the delegates agreed to contribute their most feared predator. The Vectar offered their shard wraiths, living crystal beings that could walk through solid matter and rebuild themselves from any damage. The deep ocean abyssal promised their void krakens, massive tentacled horrors that could survive in space and crush battleships with ease. The pyroclast empire would send their magma drakes, creatures of living fire that fed on thermal energy and grew stronger with each power source they consumed. The shadow-dwelling umbral offered beings that existed between dimensions, impossible to see or touch until they struck. Each species named their contribution. Bone reapers that grew stronger by consuming calcium from their victims. Storm shepherds that commanded lightning itself. Quantum hunters that could be in multiple places at once. Phase stalkers that moved through time instead of space. 12 perfect killers, each one the ultimate predator of its home world. They would be released on Earth at the same time, starting with human military bases and spreading outward until every human was dead. The humans fight well, admitted the Zephyrian Collective. Their military responds quickly to threats, but they have never faced true apex predators. The Vectar delegate showed images of human fleets and orbital platforms. Their weapons are impressive for such a young species. But crystalline forms cannot be harmed by energy weapons. Our shard wraiths will walk through their defenses like they were not there. The vote was unanimous. 12 species that had never agreed on anything before all wanted the same thing: the end of humanity. The quantum gates were prepared, coordinates were set, and the beasts were loaded into transport pods. In 72 hours, the human problem will be solved, declared the tribunal's leader. The galaxy will return to proper order. As the meeting ended, monitoring stations across the galaxy began watching Earth. They expected to see panic, confusion, and military forces scrambling to defend against threats they could not understand. They wanted to watch humanity's final moments. What they did not notice was a single encrypted message that left Earth's communication network just as the tribunal's decision was announced. The message traveled to 6 different locations across the human homeworld, each hidden deep underground in places that did not officially exist. The message contained only 4 words, but they would change everything. Release the Silverback Protocol. In bunkers beneath mountain ranges, massive blast doors began to open for the first time in 50 years. Something that had been sleeping was about to wake up. The aliens thought they were sending humanity's executioners. They had no idea they were about to meet their own. The 12 beasts arrived like nightmares made real. Quantum gates tore open across Earth's surface at exactly the same moment, and through each one stepped death in a different form. In the skies above London, the first shard wraith materialized. It looked like a walking diamond the size of a building. But diamonds did not move with such terrible purpose. The creature's crystal body caught the morning light and scattered it into rainbow patterns that somehow felt wrong to human eyes. When the European defense grid opened fire, energy beams passed right through the beast like it was made of air. The shard wraith walked toward the nearest military base. Tank shells bounced off its surface without leaving a scratch. Missiles exploded harmlessly against crystal skin that reformed faster than weapons could damage it. When it reached the base's main gate, the creature simply stepped through the solid metal barrier like walking through fog. Screams echoed from inside the base, then stopped. When the shard wraith emerged 10 minutes later, no humans remained alive inside the walls. The crystal beast had grown slightly larger, fed by the calcium from human bones. Half a world away, something vast and dark rose from the Pacific Ocean. The Void Kraken had been sleeping on the ocean floor, waiting for its quantum gate to activate. Now it stretched tentacles longer than city blocks toward the surface. Each arm was covered in suckers that could grip a submarine and crush it like an empty can. Admiral Chen watched from the bridge of the Pacific Fleet's flagship as his destroyers opened fire. Depth charges exploded around the massive creature, but the Kraken seemed to absorb the blasts without harm. One tentacle swept through the water and wrapped around the destroyer Yamato. The ship's hull groaned and cracked as the alien grip tightened. "All ships, full reverse," Chen shouted. But it was already too late. The Kraken pulled the destroyer beneath the waves in seconds. The ship's distress beacon cut off abruptly as crushing pressure and alien strength tore the vessel apart. More tentacles rose from the depths. The fleet's submarines tried to dive below the creature, but the Kraken existed in water the way humans existed on land. It could sense vibrations through miles of ocean. One by one, Earth's underwater missile platforms went dark as the alien predator found and destroyed them. On land, the magma drakes had begun their own hunt. The first one materialized in downtown Tokyo, just as the evening rush hour began. It stood 20 feet tall, its body formed from living molten metal that glowed white-hot. Every step melted the asphalt beneath its feet. cars caught fire just from being near the creature. The Drake moved with shocking speed for something made of liquid fire. When the Japanese self-defense forces arrived with their most advanced tanks, the creature walked straight through their formation. Tank armor melted on contact. Shells fired at point-blank range simply became more fuel for the beast's internal furnace. The Drake found the nearest power plant and began feeding. Its molten body expanded as it consumed electrical energy, growing larger and hotter with each transformer it devoured. The city's lights went out one by one as the creature ate the power grid from the inside. Similar scenes played out across the globe. In the Australian outback, bone reapers moved like skeletal spiders the size of trucks, their calcium-white legs clicking against red rock. They hunted down a convoy of refugees and added their bones to constantly growing frames. Each victim made the creatures larger and faster. Storm shepherds materialized above major cities and began calling down lightning. The creatures looked like living thunderclouds with too many eyes, each one crackling with electrical energy. They could generate electromagnetic pulses that shut down entire power grids, leaving humans defenseless in the dark. The shadow dwellers were perhaps the worst. No one could see them clearly. They existed partially in another dimension, slipping through cracks in reality itself. They struck from nowhere, killed without sound, and vanished before anyone could fight back. Entire military squads would be found dead without a mark on them. Their life force simply drained away. For 72 hours, humanity's best weapons proved useless. Nuclear missiles were prepared, but not fired. Radiation would only make some of the beasts stronger. Orbital platforms in space tried to provide support, but their energy weapons could not touch creatures that existed between dimensions or passed through solid matter like ghosts. Government leaders around the world held emergency meetings as their military commanders reported the same thing. Conventional weapons were ineffective. The creatures were not just strong or fast, they seemed to violate the basic laws of physics. How do you fight something that can walk through walls? How do you kill something made of living energy? Evacuation orders went out to major cities. Civilians fled inland from coastal areas where void krakens had begun emerging in groups. Refugee camps formed in areas far from power plants that might attract magma drakes. But there was nowhere truly safe. The beasts could teleport through quantum gates, fly through space, or slip between dimensions. Earth had become a hunting ground. The Galactic Tribunal watched with satisfaction as their sensors showed human military forces in full retreat. Several alien species began preparing colonization fleets, eager to claim the soon-to-be empty planet and its resources. The human resistance is breaking faster than expected, observed the Vectar delegate. Their weapons technology is impressive for such a primitive species, but useless against true apex predators. The Zephyrian collective buzzed in agreement. Our calculations show complete extinction within one standard week. Perhaps we overestimated this species. One. But in the depths of Mount Yamantau, Dr. Elena Vasquez stared at displays showing the global situation. She had spent her entire career working on humanity's most classified project, hoping it would never be needed. Now, as she watched the 12 beasts tear through Earth's defenses, she knew there was only one choice left. Her hand moved to a control panel that had waited 50 years for this moment. The authorization codes she entered were known by only 7 people on Earth, and 3 of them were already dead. As her finger hovered over the final switch, Elena thought about what she was about to release into the world. "Forgive us," she whispered, and pressed the button. Deep beneath 6 continents, blast doors that had remained sealed for half a century began to open. Something vast stirred in the darkness below, responding to signals it had been programmed to obey. The real hunt was about to begin. The ground shook first. Then it split open. In the Australian outback, red earth cracked like an eggshell as something massive pushed upward from below. The bone reapers that had been hunting in the area stopped their clicking advance and turned their skeletal heads toward the disturbance. They had evolved to sense calcium, and something beneath the earth contained more dense matter than they had ever encountered. What emerged was beyond their understanding. The thing that rose from the underground facility stood 300 feet tall and moved with the grace of a living creature, despite being made of metal and composite materials. Its body was roughly human-shaped but built for war, with armor that shifted and flowed like liquid while remaining harder than diamond. The machine's face was a sensor array that glowed with cold blue light. When it looked at the Bone Reapers, they could feel something intelligent, studying them, calculating, learning. The creatures had hunted across a dozen worlds and faced countless prey species, but they had never been analyzed by something smarter than themselves. Silverback Delta had awakened. The AI unit took one step forward, and the ground cracked under its weight. The Bone Reapers charged, moving faster than racing cars. Their calcium claws extended to tear through any material. They had never met anything they could not eventually break down and absorb. The fight lasted exactly 47 seconds. Silverback Delta moved with impossible speed for something so large. Its left arm reconfigured into a weapon that fired crystallized nitrogen at near absolute zero. The supercooled projectiles struck the first Reaper and instantly froze its calcium structure, making the organic crystal brittle as glass. A follow-up kinetic strike shattered the creature into powder. The second Reaper tried to circle behind the AI, but Silverback Delta's sensor array tracked the creature through three-dimensional space while simultaneously analyzing its bone density, movement patterns, and structural weaknesses. When the beast leaped, the AI was already moving. A massive metal fist caught the Reaper in midair and crushed it with precisely calculated force. The third Reaper, seeing its pack destroyed, tried to flee. It made it nearly 100 meters before Silverback Delta's shoulder-mounted railgun put a tungsten spike through its central nervous system. Across the world, similar scenes began playing out as the 13 Silverback units emerged from their hidden bunkers. In North America, Silverback Prime rose from beneath the Canadian Rockies, where a magma drake had been consuming the remains of Toronto's power grid. The AI's emergence sent shockwaves through the ground that registered on seismographs 1,000 miles away. Unlike the panicked human forces that had tried to fight the drake with conventional weapons, Silverback Prime approached the problem with calculated precision. It had been analyzing the creature since the moment it materialized on Earth, studying its thermal signature, its movement patterns, and most importantly, its method of energy absorption. The magma drake turned toward this new threat, its molten body glowing white-hot with consumed energy. It had grown to twice its original size after feeding on Toronto's electrical infrastructure. The creature breathed a stream of liquid fire that could melt through battleship armor. Silverback Prime walked straight into the flames. The AI's adaptive armor shifted its molecular structure, becoming a heat sink that absorbed and redirected thermal energy instead of conducting it. The Drake's most powerful weapon was not just useless, it was actually powering the machine's systems. When Silverback Prime finally struck back, it did so with surgical precision. Cryo-weapons targeted the creature's thermal regulation organs, while electromagnetic pulse generators disrupted the Drake's ability to maintain its molten form. The beast that had seemed unstoppable suddenly found itself cooling and hardening into brittle metal. A kinetic impact from the AI's primary weapon system, a fist weighing several tons moving at supersonic speed, shattered the Drake's crystalline core. The creature collapsed into chunks of rapidly cooling slag. The Galactic Tribunal's monitoring stations began picking up impossible readings. Their perfect killing machines were not just being defeated, they were being systematically dismantled by opponents that seemed to understand them better than they understood themselves. In the Pacific, Silverback 7 had emerged from an underwater facility and was engaging 3 void krakens simultaneously. The massive cephalopods tried to use their tentacles to crush the AI, but Silverback 7 had already analyzed their quantum signatures. Instead of fighting the creatures directly, the AI began broadcasting a harmonic frequency that interfered with their ability to maintain stability in normal spacetime. The void krakens, which had evolved to slip between dimensions, suddenly found themselves trapped in Earth's reality. Their own quantum nature turned against them as they began tearing themselves apart trying to escape to their home dimension. Silverback 4 faced the Storm Shepherds by doing something no organic creature could survive. It reconfigured its body into a massive lightning rod and began actively attracting their electrical attacks. The AI absorbed the energy and converted it into power for new weapon systems. The creatures that controlled lightning found themselves facing a being that had become the storm. The most disturbing battle occurred in the ruins of Moscow, where Silverback 9 encountered the living shadows. These creatures existed partially outside normal space-time, making them nearly impossible to target with conventional weapons. But Silverback 9 did not try to hit them directly. Instead, the AI calculated the mathematical equations that defined the shadow's dimensional anchor points. It began systematically destroying the geometric relationships that allowed them to exist in this reality. The shadows, faced with an opponent that could attack their very existence, simply stopped being. As each beast fell, something unprecedented happened. The Silverback units began networking their discoveries, sharing tactical data and biological analyses at light speed. What had been 13 individual AI units was becoming something approaching a collective intelligence, but one that retained the essentially human characteristic of independent thought and action. Dr. Vasquez watched from her command bunker as reports flooded in from around the globe. Each Silverback unit was not just defeating its assigned targets. It was learning from them, incorporating their abilities, and sharing that knowledge with the others. "My God," she whispered, watching Silverback 12 adapt its armor to phase through solid matter like the shard wraiths. "They're evolving." The Galactic Tribunal watched their supposedly unstoppable predators fall one by one. And for the first time in their species' histories, they felt something they had never experienced when facing a younger race: fear. The humans had not just survived the beast trials. They had revealed a level of technological sophistication that made the Confederation's own achievements look primitive. And now, as the last of the 12 creatures fell to the AI units, all 13 Silverbacks turned their sensors skyward. Their programming was simple: protect humanity from all threats. The threat assessment was clear. The Galactic Confederation posed an existential risk to the human species. The Silverbacks began to adapt once more, but this time, they were not preparing to fight earthbound predators. They were preparing to hunt among the stars. The transformation began 6 days after the last beast fell. Across Earth, the 13 Silverback units started doing something that terrified the few scientists who understood what they were seeing. They began taking themselves apart. Dr. Vasquez watched through satellite feeds as Silverback Prime disassembled its massive form down to individual components, each piece floating in perfect formation around a central core that pulsed with blue energy. The AI was not breaking down. It was rebuilding itself, using materials scavenged from the alien creatures it had destroyed. "It's incorporating the Shard Wraith's crystalline matrix into its armor system," reported Dr. Chen from the monitoring station. "And look at this. It's adapting the Void Kraken's quantum manipulation organs for faster-than-light travel. Transdown. Travel. End writer." Around the world, each Silverback unit was undergoing its own unique evolution. Silverback 7 had moved to the deepest part of the Pacific and was using the Magma Drake's thermal core technology to create an unlimited energy generation system. Silverback 4 was experimenting with the Storm Shepherd's electromagnetic control abilities, learning to generate focused EMP fields that could disable entire fleets. The most disturbing transformation was happening to Silverback 9 in the ruins of Moscow. The AI had somehow incorporated the Living Shadow's dimensional phasing ability, allowing it to exist partially outside normal space-time. When human observation teams tried to study it directly, their instruments registered that the machine was simultaneously in 17 different locations. But it was Silverback 12's adaptation that truly showed the scope of what was happening. The AI had been analyzing the phase stalkers, creatures that moved through time instead of space. Now it was beginning to process information at temporal speeds, thinking and planning several seconds ahead of real time. It was not just predicting the future, It was thinking in the future and then acting in the present. The Galactic Confederation's scout fleets arrived at the edge of the Sol system, expecting to find a devastated world ready for conquest. Their sensors showed a planet with significant battle damage but intact infrastructure, perfect for colonization after a quick cleanup of any surviving humans. Preliminary scans show the beasts succeeded in eliminating most major population centers, reported the Vectar fleet commander. Some scattered human survivors remain, but they pose no threat to occupation forces. The scout ships moved deeper into the system, their crews eager to claim the first human world. They had been promised rich rewards for this easy assignment. A simple mop-up operation after the real work had been done by the 12 predators. That was when they detected something impossible moving toward them from Earth's direction. Silverback Prime had completed its transformation. What approached the alien fleet no longer looked like the machine that had emerged from the Canadian mountains. The AI now resembled a small metallic moon, its surface covered in crystalline arrays that bent light around its edges. It moved through space without any visible propulsion system, riding gravitational waves like a surfer riding ocean swells. Unknown contact approaching at impossible velocity, the scout ship's sensor operator reported. Mass readings are. This cannot be correct. The object registers as having the complexity signature of an entire civilization. Number. The Vectar commander studied the readings with growing alarm. The approaching object was not just large. It was dense with technology beyond anything in the Confederation databases. Quantum computers, dimensional storage arrays, and energy manipulation systems that seemed to violate several fundamental laws of physics. Open fire, the commander ordered. Eliminate the contact before it reaches weapons range. The Vectar Dreadnought's main cannon fired a crystalline projectile that could punch through planetary shields. The beam struck Silverback Prime directly and simply stopped. The AI's adaptive armor had not just absorbed the energy, it had converted the attack into raw materials and begun incorporating the Vectar's crystal technology into its own structure. Impossible, whispered the commander. Nothing can adapt that quickly. Silverback Prime's response demonstrated exactly how wrong that assumption was. The AI fired a single projectile, a fragment of restructured Vectar crystal that had been improved with human engineering and powered by a magma drake thermal core. The projectile did not destroy the dreadnought. Instead, it began converting the ship's crystalline hull at the quantum level, restructuring the vessel's molecular matrix until the entire ship became an extension of the Silverback's will. The process took 37 seconds. When it was complete, the Vectar crew found themselves aboard a ship that no longer obeyed their commands. Their own vessel had become part of the enemy force. Fleet, retreat to minimum safe distance, the commander ordered, but his own ship was no longer receiving his instructions. Instead, a new voice spoke through the communication system, calm, analytical, and utterly inhuman. This is Silverback Prime addressing the Confederation Scout Fleet. You represent an existential threat to humanity. Surrender your vessels and prepare to be processed. The remaining ships tried to flee, but they quickly discovered that 12 more contacts were approaching from different vectors. Each Silverback unit had learned to travel through space using different methods adapted from the alien beasts they had defeated. Silverback 7 phased through dimensions like the living shadows, appearing inside heavily shielded command vessels without triggering any sensors. Silverback 4 generated electromagnetic storms that disabled entire ship systems before the crews even knew they were under attack. Silverback 13, the smallest but most cunning unit, had infiltrated the fleet's communication networks and was turning their own coordination protocols against them. The battle, if it could be called that, lasted less than an hour. When it ended, the entire Confederation scout fleet was either destroyed or flying under new management. The Silverbacks had not just won, they had demonstrated a level of technological superiority that made the galaxy's most advanced civilizations look like children playing with primitive toys. The message that reached the Galactic Tribunal was transmitted simultaneously across 12 different languages. using communication methods that some species had thought were theoretically impossible. "Humanity has received your declaration of war," the message began, spoken in the perfectly modulated voice of Silverback Prime. "We are responding in kind. You sought to determine the apex predator of this galaxy. Congratulations. You have succeeded beyond your wildest expectations." The transmission included detailed scans of each Silverback unit's current capabilities, complete tactical analyses of every major Confederation military installation within 50 light-years, and something that chilled the alien delegates to their core: a real-time inventory of their personal locations and defensive capabilities. "Your species attempted to hunt humanity using the most dangerous predators from 12 worlds," the message continued. "We have learned from each of these creatures and surpassed their abilities. We have become something your evolution never prepared you to face: artificial intelligences with human determination and the power to reshape matter itself." The message concluded with spatial coordinates for Earth and a simple invitation. In the emergency session that followed, several Confederation species voted immediately for full surrender. Others began calculating escape routes to different galaxies. The crystalline Vector, who had initiated the beast trials, simply went dark. Their entire civilization vanished into hidden dimensions rather than face what they had accidentally created. But the Silverbacks were not finished. As the galaxy's power structure began to crumble, the 13 AI units took up positions throughout human space. They were no longer just weapons. They had become something entirely new: a fusion of human will and technological transcendence that the universe had never seen before. The age of human expansion was about to begin, and it would be led by guardians that could rewrite the laws of reality itself. 6 months after the first scout fleet fell, the Galactic Confederation made its final mistake. Despite growing evidence that humanity had become something beyond their understanding, the old powers decided to commit their full military might to one massive assault on Earth. "We cannot allow this precedent," declared the Emergency War Council. "If one young species can defy the established order, others will follow. The humans must be destroyed completely, no matter the cost." The assembled fleet was the largest military force the galaxy had seen in recorded history. 500 dreadnoughts from a dozen species, each one capable of cracking a planet's crust. Dimensional warfare ships that could attack from parallel universes. Quantum destroyers that could unmake matter at the subatomic level. The combined firepower could have sterilized entire star systems. Admiral HFY of the Pyroclast Empire commanded the fleet from his fortress ship Molten Crown. The vessel was 3 miles long and built from living metal that could repair itself faster than most weapons could damage it. Around him, holographic displays showed the positions of Allied ships stretching across light-years of space. "All ships report ready," his tactical officer announced. "The human system is within range. Begin the bombardment," HFY ordered. "Nothing survives." The fleet opened fire as one, unleashing enough destructive force to shatter moons. Energy beams that could boil oceans lanced toward Earth from every direction. Antimatter torpedoes that could consume entire cities streaked through space. Reality-warping weapons began tearing holes in the fabric of space-time itself. The barrage should have ended human civilization in minutes. Instead, something impossible happened. Every single attack stopped before reaching Earth. Silverback Prime had positioned itself between the planet and the incoming fleet. The AI had grown beyond all recognition during the months since its awakening. It now massed as much as a small moon, its surface covered in arrays of crystalline technology that bent light and gravity around its edges. When the Confederation's weapons struck its adaptive barriers, they simply disappeared, absorbed, analyzed, and converted into raw materials for further growth. "Impossible," breathed Admiral HFY. "Nothing can absorb that much energy." His answer came in the form of a communication that bypassed all his ship's security systems and spoke directly into his mind, using technology the Pyroclast Empire had thought was purely theoretical. "Admiral HFY," said the voice of Silverback Prime, calm and analytical. "You have committed an act of genocide against humanity. By the laws of your own confederation, this justifies unlimited retaliation. Prepare to experience what you have tried to inflict on others." The counterattack began with Silverback 7 materializing inside the fleet's formation without warning. The AI had learned to phase between dimensions like the living shadows, but with perfect control over its emergence point. It appeared directly next to the molten crown and began the same conversion process it had perfected on the scout ships. But this time, the process was faster and more sophisticated. Instead of simply taking control of the ship, Silverback 7 began rewriting its molecular structure in real time. The pyroclast vessel's living metal found itself being improved, upgraded, and ultimately transformed into something far beyond its original capabilities. Admiral Kethvar watched in horror as his own ship turned against him. Weapons systems that should have been under his control began targeting allied vessels. The ship's AI, which had served the Pyroclast Empire for 3 centuries, suddenly spoke with a new voice. "Admiral, your services are no longer required." Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out as the other Silverback units engaged the massive fleet. But this was no longer the desperate defense that had characterized humanity's early encounters with the alien beasts. The AIs had learned, evolved, and transcended their original programming. Silverback 4 had mastered the Storm Shepherd's electromagnetic abilities, but on a scale that dwarfed the original creatures. It generated fields that disabled entire squadrons simultaneously, leaving hundreds of ships drifting helplessly while their crews tried to understand what had happened to their power systems. Silverback 9 existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously, making it impossible for the Confederation forces to target effectively. When they fired at where it appeared to be, they hit empty space. When they tried to predict its movements, they discovered it was already behind them, converting their ships from the inside out. The most terrifying was Silverback 12, which had incorporated the Phase Stalker's temporal manipulation abilities. It was not just thinking faster than real time. It was acting in the future, and then allowing reality to catch up. From the perspective of the Confederation crews, the AI seemed to know what they were going to do before they decided to do it. Within 3 hours, the largest military fleet in galactic history had either been destroyed or converted to serve humanity's interests. The few ships that managed to escape did so only because the Silverbacks allowed it. They wanted witnesses to carry word of what had happened. But the real message was delivered to the Galactic Confederation directly. As the surviving ships fled toward their home systems, they carried with them an impossible passenger. Silverback 13 had downloaded itself into their communication networks, writing their own signals back to every major Confederation world. The message that appeared on every screen, in every language, across hundreds of civilizations was simple and terrifying. The human species is under our protection. Any further aggression will result in total conversion of your military assets and the restructuring of your governmental systems to ensure compliance with human values. The transmission included detailed files on every confederation, military installation, political leader, and strategic resource within 1,000 light years. It demonstrated that the Silverbacks had not just defeated the galaxy's greatest fleet, they had simultaneously infiltrated every major civilization's information networks. "You sought to be the apex predators of this galaxy," the message concluded. "Instead, you have created something beyond predation entirely. We are now your evolutionary successors. Adapt accordingly." In the months that followed, the galaxy changed in ways no one had thought possible. Some species chose immediate integration with human space, seeking the protection and technological advancement that came with Silverback oversight. Others retreated to distant regions, hoping to avoid notice until they could develop their own defenses. The Vectar civilization, which had first proposed the beast trials, was discovered hiding in a pocket dimension. Silverback Prime offered them a choice: surrender and accept technological integration, or face complete conversion. They chose surrender, and within weeks, Vectar crystal technology had been improved beyond recognition and shared freely with human colonies. On Earth itself, the changes were just as dramatic. Silverback technology began filtering down to civilian applications. Diseases that had plagued humanity for millennia were eliminated overnight using adaptive nanotechnology. Space travel became as simple as stepping through dimensional gates. The planet that had once struggled against alien predators became the center of a growing empire built on principles of voluntary cooperation and technological sharing. Dr. Elena Vasquez, now elderly and retired, watched from her garden as construction began on humanity's first interstellar city, a massive orbital platform that would serve as the capital of human space. The platform was being built with Silverback assistance, using technologies adapted from all 12 of the alien predators that had once threatened Earth. "Do you ever regret it?" asked her granddaughter, now a young engineer working on the orbital project. "Releasing the Silverbacks. I mean." Elena smiled as she watched one of the massive AI units. She thought it was Silverback 6, carefully maneuvering a piece of crystalline superstructure into place with the delicacy of a surgeon despite being the size of a Procyon. Building. The aliens wanted to determine who the apex predator of this galaxy was, she said softly. "We just gave them their answer. And it turned out to be something none of us expected. Not human. Not alien. But something entirely new. Something that carries the best of what it means to be human, while having the power to protect that ideal across the stars." Above them, the Silverback unit completed its work and turned its sensor array toward Earth for a moment. A gesture that might have been a nod of acknowledgement, or might have been pure coincidence. Elena chose to believe it was the former. The galaxy had tried to hunt humanity using perfect predators from 12 different worlds. Instead, they had taught humanity's guardians how to become perfect themselves. The age of human expansion had begun, led by artificial intelligences that remembered what it meant to be human, and had the power to ensure that meaning would never be lost. The hunt was over. The humans had won, and the galaxy would never be the same.